The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Josh Sigala from thestandard.io.
Well, hello there, everybody.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to Issue 1. Issue 1, Genesis Block Day. Today is Friday, January 3rd, 2025. Genesis Block Day. The first Genesis block, the first block of Bitcoin, was mined on January 3rd by Satoshi Nakamoto in the year 2009. Every transaction that has ever taken place on the Bitcoin blockchain exists in what are known as blocks, and these blocks create the blockchain. Josh Sigala, Genesis Block Day, also when Satoshi inputted the headline from the front page of the Times for January 3rd, 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. As it says here, the message is a reference to the financial crisis, which many believe was caused by reckless monetary policies of central banks, largely the reason for Satoshi's creation of Bitcoin. Josh Sigala, what do you think about Genesis Block Day, January 3rd?
Yeah, I love it. Congratulations, everybody. The thing that I love about the Chancellor on brink of second bailout for the banks or whatever the article was, is that it's such a spy thing to do. It's such a sort of old school way of time stamping. And the blockchain itself is such a massive leap forward in time stamping without trust. There's different methods of time stamping back in the day where like trustless time stamping, so to speak, where you would maybe let's say you invented something and you would post that to yourself so that the post office would put a stamp on it and it would come to you, and then you put that letter in your vault, and there you have a timestamp by a third party without the third party knowing what's in there. And then if one day somebody comes along and wants proof that you had knowledge of something that you timestamped, you could take that letter out and go, look, judge, this is unopened. The stamp is sealed. It's from the post office, a third party, and it was timestamped the 3rd of February. And so things like that. But inserting a newspaper article is beautiful. It's a really nice old school meets new school way of timestamping, because the blockchain is all about the timestamp, right?
Now, how is this different from White Paper Day, Josh? Which one came first?
Well, the white paper was the initial idea release, and and I'm not sure actually. I think the white paper came first. I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure the
Yeah,
white paper was about 3 months before. Well, it was October
yeah,
31st, right? It's a Halloween white paper. And then here we
yeah,
are, January 3rd, the middle of vacation. And I remember it. I remember reading about the white paper on Slashdot, and I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, internet money. And then three
mm,
months later, there was some kind of a proof of concept. And I was, of course,
yeah,
interested, but I didn't have the right hardware. You needed a PC to run it at the time, and I had all Macs. And I was very
mm,
fervent about it. So I wouldn't go just buy a PC, which seems really
yeah,
logical now. But there
yeah,
was Bitcoin, and you could send it around after Proof of Keys Day. As it says here with, or not Proof of Keys Day, but after the one before that, Genesis Block Day. And what
yeah,
it was is that Satoshi had this ready, and in a way, he, she, or space alien was kind of waiting for this article in the Times. When this article came out, Chancellor on the brink of second bailout for banks, that's when they decided to launch their project. That's when they made this Genesis Day. So that's what's really
yeah,
neat. They could have chosen January 1st, they could have chosen January 11th, but like you say,
yeah.
Josh, they chose the date for the article. When this article came out is when they launched the project. As Jameson Lopp posted on his Twitter account, you can see here it's embedded in the op return of the message when they mined the first block. So they mined the first block,
Mm,
they put this message in here. As you can see, it's kind of broken up, looks like Morse code almost. broken up into lines. But as we, of course, know, you search for that and you come up with this fantastic newspaper from the Times, a London, British newspaper. And it's so great. It says, eat out from £5. More than 900 great restaurants, including 4 Gordon Ramsay favorites from £15. It's also a time when Israel is preparing to send tanks and troops into Gaza. But the main, and there's some, entertainment type articles on the side. But the main one for us is Chancellor on the brink of second bailout for banks. And this is what Satoshi and the Bitcoin was kind of rebelling against, is this money that was controlled by banks, where banks go out there and spend it. They decide on the economic policy. And then if it goes well, they make money. If it doesn't go well, they bail themselves out. They say, whoopsie, and then they're too big to fail, and their investments have to be paid out. Whereas your investments, when you fail or you gamble badly, you just lose. They just take the money.
Yeah. And if you look at the top of the article again for the price of stuff, the inflation really hits home now, because it's the £15 that would be the thing that was like, wow, £15. But there they say 5, which is impossible now. Like, you would never get a meal for £5 because you can't cover rent and electricity and staff and everything else. So it would be from
the newspapers at £1.50, and we don't even have newspapers anymore. They're pretty much gone.
Right.
iPhone it says, it's really funny on the inside. Like, if you look line below that, and I've never seen this before, maybe it's in some versions, not others. It says, start collecting tokens today. Pull out inside. And it must have been some kind of reward tokens or something for the newspaper. Certainly not coins, but you can see it's there. And Josh, so after this, Satoshi mines the first block. They say there's a couple of days there where no other blocks are mined until he or she or they kind of announce the project. But what happens next for Bitcoin after the first block?
Well, Satoshi was mining by himself with what's his face?
Marnie.
It's very early in the morning.
Marnie Malty and Hal Finney, I think, were some of the
Yeah, that's the one. Marnie and Hal Finney.
And read about it on the Cypherpunk mailing list, something like that. Because Satoshi put this announcement out, but there's no Bitcoin talk. There's no Bitcoin Twitter. There's nobody to tell on CNBC that there's a new software product out here that's going to crush absolutely all of their investments and make them all look like fools. None of that happens. Instead, there's just this kind of open source project, goes out to some of these enthusiasts, and the enthusiasts...
It doesn't have a price,
there's no price.
Mining 50 every 10 minutes.
50 every 10 minutes, and you could do it on a normal PC or a laptop or anything. So it's pretty amazing. And we're just kind of recognizing some classic stories today on Genesis Block Day, as all of the news is just obsessed with the price. So we're going to finish out this issue by giving you the price update that you need, that you deserve, so you can make your decisions. Josh, will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower this time next week, keeping in mind that you're competing against the magical Bitcoin ball, the source of all truth and knowledge in this universe?
Well, if I remember correctly, last week, it was correct. It said it's going to go higher, and it is higher. I'm going to go with higher. I'm going to go with we're going to reach the all-time highs again. But then come back down. So it's just going to be sideways for a while, which is fantastic for the bull market, because it means the bull market will run well into 2025.
I think it's all bull market, Josh. Everyone was afraid for a couple of days there. There was the downturn, and now nothing at all, just back to up. But let's see what the ball says. Here we are. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? My sources say no. My sources say no. The ball is bearish. So much for us. Moving on.
Do you know what sources it uses, by the way?
They're top secret sources. I couldn't tell you.
Oh, right.
Issue 2, Proof of Keys Day. Interestingly enough, there's another Bitcoin holiday today on January 3rd, kind of latching on to Genesis Block Day, putting it in there with Satoshi's birthday and White Paper Day, as we seem to have so many Bitcoin holidays now. We have Proof of Keys Day, occurring every January 3rd, an annual practice where Bitcoin and crypto investors are encouraged to take control of any funds they keep with third-party custodians. withdrawing your Bitcoin, your keys from these exchanges. It was created by Trace Mayer, a Bitcoin educator and podcaster who created this to show the significance of self custody. And while originally more of a controversial holiday, I think Josh, you and I have talked about this before. We think it's very badly timed. January
Yeah.
3rd is when everyone's on vacation. Your hackers are
Yeah.
not in the office. Your people are skiing. They're unreachable. It's a very bad time to force these exchanges to go through their procedures because, as you know, Josh, people might not know looking at the outside, but these exchanges don't just keep all their funds in a hot wallet waiting for
Yeah.
you or any hacker to withdraw them. In fact, if you
Yeah.
keep withdrawing funds like a bank, they have several layers of perhaps security and wallets that they have to go to that they'd be forced to go through on proof of keys day. So let's talk about that aspect first. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, you're spot on. And Trace Mayer, I believe, was the originator of this idea of proof of keys day on this date. And yeah, like we ran an exchange and it was a horrible thing because we're on a skeleton staff. To have true security, you need multiple layers of things. It's not to say that you don't have the coins. And I think a proof of keys day is fantastic. Yeah. Every year there should be a run on every single Bitcoin bank to prove that you are in full reserve. And but the problem is the third of you want good security. You don't want a skeleton crew to be able to access easily the cold wallet because most hacks happen internally. So you don't want that. You want very strong multi-sig where multiple people need to sign and this and that to release vast tranches of crypto. And and yeah, the third, everyone's on holiday, skeleton crew in most companies. It's a terrible, 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 terrible timing, and it just sucks. It sucks for the whole industry because people will fail at proving, and it never really took off either. Like we would talk about it, prove key states, but it never really took off because even the exchanges, well, the exchanges probably won't promote it anyway because they're probably most of them in fractional reserve, um. But yeah, it never took off because I believe because the date. It's just not a good date.
Now, it is a little controversial now, but I like the second half of this, you holding your own keys.
Yeah.
There's new laws in Europe. You have to prove that you have your keys. You have to send in screenshots or something. Peter Todd had a weird tweet where he's talking about people timestamping screenshots in the blockchain so that they could prove that they had such and such a Bitcoin at such and such a time or some kind of thing, some kind of IRS thing when you hold your Bitcoins, what they are. And I think that it's even more important now what Trace was saying, even though I agree, I think he was saying it on the wrong day, basically. And
Yeah.
he was trying to piggyback on the other holiday as well. So it's like Genesis block day, comma, proof your keys. But as far as people holding your own keys, I think it's an even more exciting time than ever to hold your own keys and to get your first Trezor or whatever you like, Blockstream, Jade, or Ledger hardware wallet, because it's really kind of amazing. You might not realize what's going on in there. When you use a new Trezor and you create it, and you can do this offline as well, you don't have to be connected to the internet, although I think it helps. It creates a new seed for you. And from that, it can create a whole new galaxy of other seeds, which are essentially each like its own bank. So you're creating a bank, 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 all these banks all of a sudden, and it's just in this little Trezor. You write down your words, you put all of that in a box, and then you put it in a safe deposit box, you bury it under a house, you put it in your backpack, you put it in the wherever you're going to put it, you hide it somewhere, all these different things. And suddenly
Yeah.
that's your little bank. That's your little money.
Mhm.
And then if you send Bitcoin even there in like $100 or whatever it is, that's $100 that you own that's off the grid, really. It's not being owned by
Mhm.
Coinbase or someone else. And if they decide that you shouldn't have it, they can take it away from you. And that's kind of the whole point of Bitcoin. And I know that everyone's talking about the price now, and CNBC is nonstop price. And I tried to Google stories for this show. I couldn't find them. All I could find is that the Bitcoin has a
Nice.
price and that it's going up next year, and different people think it's going up different amounts. And there's no additional coverage there. But what makes it magical as opposed to just a dollar bill or an electronic dollar that's in your bank account is that when you create the wallet with the Trezor and you send the money out there away from the Coinbase, away from even Strike or Swan Bitcoin or whatever it is, the one that you trust, the one that you say isn't going to be BTC-E and run away with
Mm,
your coins tomorrow, the one that's not sheep marketplace, the good one, that's the one where
mm,
you keep your Bitcoin. They're safe there. And as far as what Josh is saying about rehypothecation, that means they could be lending out more Bitcoin than they have, saying that they have more. And if you ask for them, that could be a problem. Just running off in general, having at this point, having government controls placed upon them. So all the things that we say about Bitcoin, where we're like, if you have it in that Trezor and you have those words and you bring them in and you want to send that somewhere, and even if that somewhere is like a banned book, it's like a negative idea or a positive idea, depending on what day it is. You can do that with Bitcoin. You can't do that with Coinbase Bitcoin, right? If you take your Coinbase Bitcoin, you try to send it to allegedly a bad idea, they could stop you, right? They could stop your Bitcoin from being there. Or conversely, if you got Bitcoin from a bad idea, a bad wallet, they could say, no, that's not money. That's not money here at
yeah,
this store. This store doesn't take
yeah.
that
We've
kind
black marked that. We've
of,
black.
yeah.
I mean,
And that's the whole point of real
also,
Bitcoin. So, and that's why you want to use it. That's why you want to learn about it. That's why it's valuable. It's not just valuable
yeah,
because they put it on TV and they increase the price and they say it's going up next week. It's going up next week. It's this core value that's always been there that we've talked about all time. That's
yeah.
still, and I think that
If
comes through in the second half of Proof of Keys Day because it's Proof of Keys on you, not about this exchange thing, taking down the exchanges, but just about you,
yeah,
like even getting $100 out of Coinbase into a Trezor wallet, starting to figure out like, buying a safe, getting a safe deposit box, getting multiple safe deposit boxes,
mm,
whatever you got to
mm,
do to provide physical security for that digital thing, because
yeah,
that can free you. And that can be really the freedom money that we talk about in Bitcoin is that off the grid, off the chain Bitcoin.
yeah, yeah. And there's reasons to have your money on chain if you're a day trader, if you're sorry, on an exchange, if you're a day trader and such, and you're always going to be moving and exchanging. I understand it, but another way to think of it, which never gets mentioned, is that if you have your Bitcoin or your crypto on an exchange, you're effectively investing in in a startup, and how many startups fail? Uh, even worse, you're investing in a startup without any equity in the company because you're putting it there and you're not getting any return or anything from that company succeeding apart from keeping your Bitcoin. But most startups, and you can ask any VC, most startups fail. So what, so even if it's not nefarious, even if they don't run off with your money or fractional reserve it or whatever else, even if they're fully above board, they might just fail as a startup. And and then you've lost your money as well because maybe they've run out of whatever and then they get hacked or whatever. But most startups fail. So by you having your crypto on an exchange, you're effectively saying, here's startup that most likely will fail. I'm going to store all my keys on there and I don't want any equity in return. it's, it's amazing. So yeah, get your crypto off exchanges. It's
Well, and
and
it really
I got to listen to my own
it's the
advice too.
pattern. Like I didn't get any money from PayPal. I was an early user there. I didn't get any money from eBay or Amazon or any of these things. And in the same way, I didn't get any money from Coinbase. Coinbase
Yeah.
never did airdrop. A lot of these NFT things, they've come in and given you an airdrop. They've said, "Hey, you traded a lot on our platform. You made NFTs happen. You hold a certain key. We're going to give you free money." Never
Mm,
happened on Coinbase, never happened on eBay, never happened on any of these platforms. And Bitcoin is your one chance where if you truly hold it, if you hold it in a Trezor wallet, if you have it offline, which again, part of that is that when you create the keys on the Trezor, it doesn't share the keys with your screen. It creates the
yeah.
keys on the little box right there. So it's like a little, for simplistic purposes, it's like a random number generator. And think about
Yeah.
how neat it is that you have a random number generator in a little box that can create this universe of keys for you, separate from even your computer, because your computer is spying on you and trying to steal your keys. And Coinbase is, already stolen your keys. But then there's this alternative to that.
Well, you've given it to them.
Or yeah, well, you have this Trezor, you have this like magical little key generator, and you have this like universe of keys
Mm.
that
Mm.
you can create, that you can control, and
Yeah.
it's pretty magical.
But
People call it.
another aspect of holding your own keys is you have to go through every year or more and just check that you remember the process, because there's also been a lot of people that have lost their keys because they've screwed it up. Because there's this conundrum with security, is that the more secure something is, the more likely it is that you're going to screw it up. So there's this fine line of, do we use multi-sig? How many people need to sign? Or do I just keep it on a Trezor with a single sig? What happens if I die? There's a whole bunch of things that it could get more complex. And so yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting conundrum of the modern world.
Well, and even just remembering the PIN number can be incredibly difficult. You might think you have all your PIN numbers now, but a year or two from now, you might not have them. There's that classic thing that Andreas used to talk about, where if you have your Bitcoin and you're doing a really good job of hodling it, it can get too big, right? A certain
Yeah,
amount of Bitcoin right now is too much money to have in one wallet, too much money, maybe
yeah,
even one safe deposit box. And this is why I want you guys to think about now multiple Trezors, multiple safe deposit boxes, multiple hiding spaces. And again,
yeah,
everyone's like, no, I hate the banks. I don't want to use the banks. As Andreas always said, the banks are great at physical security. They've got vaults, they've got security guards, they've got cameras, they've got clipboards and little signature things. Every time you go in and out of there, like it's a very safe place. And that's
yeah.
where you want your Bitcoin to be. And maybe you want it to be in multiple safe places. Maybe you can afford a little bit more security, a few more Trezors, and a few more safe deposit boxes, or whatever you feel comfortable
Well,
with.
back in the day when we used to do local Bitcoin trades, meaning you'd meet someone in person, there would be these apps where you can meet random people and do a trade. And we'd meet in a bank in the foyer to do the trade, because they had all the security cameras and they so you could do the trade and use them as a security measure, and not be their customer. So it was pretty funny.
Well, absolutely. And you could even go a step further. If you were a customer, you could put the money right straight into your account. Like you can't get robbed when you walk out the door if you don't have any money and you just
Mm.
put it in there. But yeah, I think proof of keys is an important discussion of this. I think people on TV need to get behind this about sending out Bitcoin, sending it around, using it, putting it in hardware wallets, learning how it works, and learning that the reason it's valuable is because it works, and that it's a circle of value, and it's
No,
not
Thomas, price. Price
just
is all
because
you
of
care
value.
about.
It is. So they've already tuned out because we already did the eight ball. So the price guys are already gone. They've made their bets. But you can learn more about the magic eight ball that predicts the future at worldcryptonetwork.com. And if you click on the left-hand side, it says hosts and guests. If you search through this amazing list, you can find Trace Mayer, and check it out. We've got 7 shows, either with Trace Mayer or where we talk about Trace Mayer. We've even got some of his final appearances at Unconfiscatable Bitcoin Conference right here in Las Vegas from 2020 of August. So check out Trace Mayer on the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue 3, Bitcoin hash rate taps all-time high. On January 3rd, hey, that's today, the network's hash rate briefly tapped 1,000 exahashes as miners continued adding capacity. We can check out the effect of this on the price of Bitcoin. Let's try to refresh the chart here, get a fresh chart from bitcoinal.com. The price of Bitcoin is 98,346 with a high of 99,000. We're below that, and a low of 96,191. Still down a little from the recent high of 106. Josh Shigala, as Max Kaiser always said, price follows hash rate and the Bitcoin hash rate just keeps going up. What can be said about that?
Well, I mean, first of all, the amazing FUD that always comes out before halvenings has always been consistent. So I remember when it went from 50 Bitcoin per block down to 25, and leading up to that, there was talks by all these specialists and all these experts in the field about how there's going to be a game theoretical crash and this and that and the other thing, and none of it happened, or a hard fork. And then when it went from 25 to 12.5, the same thing happened. You get, but this time you get professors, you get, because, we were a bit more mature, you got professors and people from banking and regulators and lawyers coming in saying, oh, this will break Bitcoin. Um, but look at it. The hash rate has just kept on climbing. I mean, the fact that like exahashes, like even one exahash is such an extraordinary amount. I remember it was below an exahash, and and someone did some brainiac did the math of, if Google turned on every single bit of their hardware that they have in every warehouse, including everyone's mobile phones that worked for them. Like, that's sort of where they went, and pointed it at the Bitcoin network, it wouldn't even add 1% or 5% or something. It was like a tiny amount of hash rate. The amount of hash rate is so extraordinary now. I mean, it's way over secure, I would say. You know? Um, but uh, it's a stunning number. It's a stunning number to see that even though we have a halving, uh, it just keeps going. So, the competition for those rare numbers is huge, and people keep on wanting to try.
So as you can see on the chart here, the blue line is the hash rate, the black line is the price of Bitcoin. It seems like it doesn't really even get going until around 2017. We have a big bump in the price, but not the hash rate. But the hash rate just continues climbing. A bit of a drop there in 2021 of the hash rate. As you see, when the price went down big time, there was a hash rate drop. Then it recovers, but the price keeps going down. So that's really
Mm.
strange right there. Then we see the price start to recover. Then it's as if the price and the hash rate have linked up. And it's just diagonal
Yeah.
straight up, a little bit of wigglies, and then this fantastic little jump right here to 100K, while we see that the hash rate just keeps going up. It's a
Yeah, and
diagonal straight line up here. Like,
if you could, you can't there, but I remember like trying to mine in like 2013 and stuff, and it was always more expensive to mine. And I've said it before on this show, like you you had to hold the mined Bitcoin for a while because you needed that capital gains to cover the electricity cost. Electricity was, even if when it was releasing 50 Bitcoin, the electricity was more than um, than it was mining. There's little periods there, like these spikes, where that wasn't the case. But generally speaking, you want to do that. So what's happening right now is that all these miners are in deficit. They're holding their Bitcoin, and eventually they hold so much that all these ETFs and such that want Bitcoin, they usually get it from miners. They get fresh Bitcoin. They can't get it until they start they offer more for them. What do you mean you can't give me the Bitcoin for 100K? Okay, I'll give you 105K for it. And then the miners, 106? Okay, 106. Boom, in mass. And they'll give them the Bitcoin. So miners, they need to hold. It's not profitable not to hold the Bitcoin for a little while until it's profitable. So when you mine, it's not instantly a win.
we have a question in the chat about whether we'll see home miners or home nodes in the future. And I think part of the problem is what you're saying there, Josh, with mining is that the technology moves so fast. By the time they shipped you a home, heater miner or whatever it is. It's a spa heater, a miner. It heats your room, whatever it was. By the time they ship it to you, that chip is so hopefully obsolete, and it would be so slow and such a terrible miner that it might work as a heater, but it wouldn't actually get you any Bitcoin. So it's going to be very hard to get that level there. As far as the nodes, nodes operate differently and could be used at home, but wouldn't have the heating properties that miners had. So it's a lot harder to imagine them in the homes. So it
Yeah.
looks, again, it looks like you look at this and you say, I got to get in on that Bitcoin mining, right? But I look at it, I see the opposite. I say, look at what a hard competition Bitcoin mining is. Look how much like energy and power and brain power and money is being thrown against Bitcoin mining. What a tough gig, right? What a tough competition to come out mildly ahead in that. Whereas on the other side, Bitcoin price, all you have to do is buy it and hold it, and it seems to match. So
Yeah.
I think that's where you
We
probably.
have here a question as well. What happens when all coins are mined and all transactions are off-chain? Well, th there's never a time when all coins are mined because it's always halved. So every 4 years it just halves. So I guess eventually after hundreds and hundreds of years it'll run out, but it'll just keep halving. So for instance, if you sell a percentage of your coins, you'll never run out of coins because you're always selling a percentage. You're not selling like the whole lot. Um, Saying that, it'll get down to a ridiculous amount where it goes from, and once we get down to 1 Satoshi or 2 Satoshis, I think what will happen is the whole network will fork to add more decimal points in behind, um, because otherwise every coin is worth every Satoshi is worth $500 or something. It's not going to be. So if you add more slices to the cake, that makes it possible. But um, the thing is with layer two is for me it's always been a bit of a problem because layer two channels never need to really be closed. But I think a lot of people will want to close them and will want to open them, and it's in those times where the layer twos work, where you might want to move something into a layer two. Now, there's there's multiple ways of doing L2s. Like Lightning is just one way, and I'm really hopeful that there will be more push like there has on the Ethereum front to have a whole bunch of people trying different ways of doing L2s because you can't put everything on layer one. It just doesn't work. The reason being is because humans are insatiable. If you have cheap transactions, people will feel that. People will keep feeling that. All of these blockchains are lying to you that say we can do it all on L1. They're all lying to you. They can't. Because if you make something cheap, then hey, why not run my entire computer on a blockchain and let someone else mine all the data? Why not just put rubbish in there for fun? Why not, I don't know, put every single just everything on the chain because it's cheap. Well, what's the point of having a price at all on chain if it's cheap? Well, what is cheap also, by the way? What's cheap to you is not cheap to someone else. Um, so layer twos allow you to scale that while batching all of those up in the layer two and still having the security of the one transaction in layer one. Um, I mean, I've talked about this a bunch of times, but you just can't. You need layer twos. You need them, and this is what and even maybe layer threes. The problem with layer twos and layer threes is liquidity, specifically on the Ethereum front, where you have decentralized exchanges and such, which I just find extraordinarily wonderful. Um, is that you start to run out of you start to thin out liquidity, and that's also a tough thing because you might have more liquidity on one chain, one L2, and less on another. So then you start having to deal with cross-chain stuff, and I think Chainlink's doing some good work there with cross-chain liquidity. But yeah, interesting problems, really interesting mathematical problems, and it's not just as easy as put everything on one chain. It really isn't. It really isn't. And there's a reason why it's been a massive argument for a long time. It's because it's not easy. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, by the way. Um, I'm just saying it's improbable.
And we do have another comment from the chat. Tune in, drop out says the year 2140 is given as the date that all Bitcoin will be mined, and by that time, transaction fees will be larger than the block reward for the block. And I do think that's the way that transaction fees will rise to pay the miners, or companies or kind of governments like the United States government might want to mine Bitcoin to keep it going for the public good so that the public could continue using Bitcoin in 2140. And as we're postulating here, as Josh is saying, perhaps multiple layers will have been built on top of Bitcoin. So you'll keep the original Bitcoin running so you can use all the additional layers. There's also this fun idea with Zeno's paradox, where if you keep selling half of your Bitcoin, you'll never sell all of it because you'll sell half and then you'll sell another half, then you sell another half, and it'll keep get smaller, but you'll never sell all of it. Like if Josh and I tried to meet and we kept going half the distance together,
Yeah,
it would get very
yeah.
small, but we'd never reach there. So
And to Skeptic's point there, on his other one of all the transactions be on layer two and none will be on layer one. The thing is that layer two, how layer two works is that, well, on Ethereum, for instance, Arbitrum, they take every 10 minutes all the transactions that happened and all the fees that happened in those transactions to pay for that hash to be put into the L1 layer so that you can lock all that data into the security of L1. So you, the whole point of an L2 is you need the security of L1. In terms of how Lightning works, you want to basically send money to the L2. So that sending to, maybe you'll batch a whole bunch of transactions. Maybe 4,000 people want to get their money into an L2. You batch all those transactions into one. Everyone pays a little bit, pays for this one transaction with a huge amount of money, but then it's done. And then they work on the L2. And every so often, because it's an L2, you've not got the security of L1 yet. You might take thousands of people's transactions and say, hey, you want to all secure your funds? Do one transaction back to L1, um, and log that, log your timestamp, similar to the newspaper that Satoshi put in.
how funny that Satoshi used a newspaper as his timestamp, and now people can use the Bitcoin blockchain that he created as their timestamp. That's pretty
Yeah.
fun. But I think we're running out of time for today. Josh, did you have a prediction or a story of the week?
Well, I've brought it up a couple of times because it takes a long time. Writing smart contracts, so, we're building on Arbitrum, which is an L2 in Ethereum. And we're doing this because we can't build it on Bitcoin, what we're building with the standard. But auditing has finished, and we're fixing the few little bits and bobs that got found during the code audit. And it's really exciting. It's really exciting what we've built with the stable core upgrade on the standard. It's super exciting. I just can't wait to release what we've done. So it's hardcore engineering. Like it's not got a picture of a monkey on the coin or anything like that for all you meme types, but it's proper infrastructure that we're building there at the standard. And yeah, I just can't wait to show you. My big thing has always been, how do we build stable coins without these centralized authorities? Because, Satoshi gave us this gift, this wonderful gift of decentralized money. And what have we done as a community? We've gone, Tether has given us a coin where they promise to have one coin for $1 in the bank. We've gone full circle. Like, it's ridiculous that we use. And Tether, as well as USDC, these centralized stablecoins are, for me, an existential threat to the entire system, because so much value is, uh, pardon the pun, tethered to those stable coins. And if they collapse for whatever reason, just like I said in the start, they're all startups. Um, they could fail, or the government could take them, or whatever. There's so many ways that could go wrong. Basically, it takes down the system. Of course, Bitcoin will be fine. That's why Bitcoin is the one true love, the one thing that you should always have most of your holdings in. But yeah,
It is funny, Josh, that the first thing they did was make a bunch of products that no Bitcoiner would ever want. I remember
yeah,
when Tether came out, I was like, why would I want that? I like Bitcoin
yeah,
when it goes up. I believe it's going to go up. Why would I want to have a stable thing? Like I'm fine
yeah,
with it going up and down. I take those risks. And the same thing with Coinbase, such a successful exchange, such a holder of keys, a negative thing again. And the cause celeb of the day, MicroStrategy, one man, one giant company taking on giant loans and huge leverage to
yeah,
buy Bitcoin over and over again, never talking about why it's important, why, how to use Bitcoin, how to hold it in your treasure, how to, all these things, just focused on this. It generates wealth. Well, we bought it because it generates wealth. Well, why'd you buy it? Because it generates wealth. I mean, we're locked into
yeah.
this, and we just see it coming through again and again and again.
Well, I mean, the
Just
original
ignoring to
reason
tell
for
us, but
stablecoins,
like Victoria said last week, it's a possible collapse. These things, these overburdens on the system, these over concentrations of power and wealth, and we'll see
yeah,
what happens. Yeah.
we'll see what happens. I mean, like the original reason for stablecoins was because the government forced all of these exchanges to start to be overly regulated, and and basically forced banks to not bank with these exchanges that were popping up, that were trying to do new things. And so the exchanges were like, we can't get back. I know exchanges that had to have full-time staff, like a big staff group, opening bank accounts because they were closing bank accounts fast. So you had to keep on opening new bank accounts because they would close one. Not because you're nefarious or whatever, just because you're a Bitcoin exchange, and every headline was bad back then about Bitcoin. So you had to keep on opening fresh bank accounts with new banks because this week that bank, shut our account. Why did you shut our account? We don't need to tell you. That was always the answer. So eventually they said, Tether came out and said, okay, well, you don't need a bank. You could just use a stablecoin. So you can be a crypto exchange with no, and it was also a bit of a hack because that way, a regulatory hack, because that way you didn't need any regulation. We're a pure crypto exchange. We don't deal with money, because you guys haven't defined this as money. And so it was, and then I really saw the reason why
It
stablecoins are
was a
so important.
Binance level genius move. It was Binance level.
It was Binance level. Yeah. Yeah. And, so I mean, and then eventually I started seeing why it's important, specifically because it's very, very difficult for old school people, for mass adoption. It's important, stablecoins, because for most people like us who are like, got in early, and we use Bitcoin a lot, we're way over than what we had originally. And so if it dips a little bit, it doesn't matter. But anyone accepting Bitcoin right now, and then it goes down and they need to restock the thing that they're selling, and they can't because Bitcoin's now down or up or whatever, it's too much of a gamble. But not only that, you have these issues where people find it very, very difficult, specifically bookkeepers. I mean, not bookkeepers, not bookies. Well, they might find it difficult too. But
Well,
if you're keeping your
bookmakers is
books, or
one thing, bookkeepers
accountants,
is another.
yeah, I mean, accountants need stability. I mean, they don't need it, but it makes life a hell of a lot easier when you get in $1, it's still worth $1. They don't need to calculate capital gains or capital losses for everything you do, and when you did the transaction, and this and that and the other, and taxes, and it gets very hard. If you can say, I sold this thing for one, I got one, and it's still one. And so that makes sense. Plus it's still programmable. So anyway, the point is, we at the Standard have been building a long time, ways to develop stable coins that are decentralized. That's That's the that's what I was getting to.
And that's why you call them stable coins.
Stable, stable coin. Yeah,
Marketing.
exactly.
There you go. Write that down. All right. But no, I don't know if I have a story of the week or anything to say. Thanks to everybody for joining us, giving us a thumbs up. It's kind of hard to do these shows during the holiday weekends and the holiday times. We do need to do our year in the review show, but I didn't think it would be good this week because I didn't think anybody would be here. So we're going to rally in the chat room. I'm going to try to get people to commit to next week so we can do all the things, review, tell you the company of the year, all of that like we always do sometimes. Hopefully do that next week. So that's my story of the week, is that hopefully we'll do the show next week. They're supposed to do this week. But I do think McLaughlin used to film a bunch of these. So I think he would pre-film the 2 year in review shows and then play them over the holidays when he was skiing on some mountain in
Uh,
Colorado. I'm pretty sure he didn't do this live
that's
every
the lovely thing about having a full staff of people.
time. So many additional people working for these big shows. But thanks to everybody for joining us, giving us a thumbs up. Thanks for saying hi in the chat or putting up a
Yeah.
comment later. It doesn't have to be all spam in the comments. There could be one or two comments that are like, I am not a spam comment, but I wouldn't say that because they'll probably spam you. But thanks so much for joining us. Until next time,